Hello YouTube, welcome to my YouTube channel, Anna Bella, and today I am going to be reviewing the last episode of BBC's new Lord of the Flies, episode 4, Ralph. Oh my goodness, what a gut punch this was. It's beautifully done. I'm loving the fact that we got more backstory. Previously we had all the children getting on the plane. I hope that scene showed us context, showed whose parents turned up, whose didn't. Loved that. I love the fact that we got the choir boy scene because that set up the relationship between Jack and Simon's awe of God. And Jack was down the other end with his, singing C sharp or whatever it is, because that's what he can do, because that's what he said in the book. With Ralph, we got a more detailed background. His father was a petty officer. And that's very interesting because in the American film of Lord of the Flies, all of the children are army cadets. Naval ones, which I find fascinating. So we've got that link there. But I'm also loving the stag imagery. Why are stags important? Well, stags are actually a symbol for Jesus and God. So that's fascinating that they're, chasing this. But also you get the relationship between Ralph and his father and the relationship between Ralph and his dying mother. I love the fact we got all of that encompassing because it was a softer way of setting up the Ralph and Piggy dynamic, because, spoiler warning, Piggy's not going to make it out alive. We've already had the sad murder of Simon. Now we're going to have the sad murder of Piggy and the attempted murder of Ralph. Because the stealing of the fire and the stealing of Piggy's glasses were done in such, the fire was done in such a quick way, stealing of Piggy's glasses was done in a violent way, and the fact that we then had Ralph leading Piggy, which is basically civilization, summed up in a moment. There's an excellent making of the BBC's Lord of the Flies, which was brilliant because it explained how they got that lovely orange, because in the book, the island and nature described as a character. I love the fact that that orange was brilliantly done and it didn't involve any special effects. It just involved this special film that they put on the camera. I love that. And it turned all the foliage orange because they couldn't shoot at night with the kids. I love the fact that throughout this particular episode, you saw the blue of Jack's eyes when the choice was before him. And whatever choice he made, you got to see that conflictedness. And also, I think because we had that episode that just focused on Jack, the more conflicted he was in this episode because he knew that he was losing control, and he was losing control to Roger. Like I say, Roger is to Jack as Piggy is to Ralph, because Jack only becomes more savage because Roger is there with the dropping of the stones. We'll get to that. We started off with the dropping of the stones and then the whacking on the pig. And then Jack was able to do the final cut. And in this, we will see the ultimate destruction. I love the fact you've got that lovely relationship between Ralph and Piggy and Sam and Eric being tortured, because that's what happens. And I love the fact that they said, oh, it's Roger. He sharpens the stick at both ends. And that means that one end is for the pig and one end is for the tribe. So the fun camp is basically the fun torture camp of savagery. And you feel all the way through it that Jack isn't evil. That the reason he's choosing savagery is he's actually enjoying not having the responsibilities that have been forced and placed on him. He doesn't want society to control him. It's almost very Peter Pan in a way. Because you've got to remember that Peter Pan kills the Lost Boys when they hit about 13. He thins them out. And he does that himself. So Peter Pan does murder, by the way. Just so you know. It's a dark, dark book. And Peter Pan, I feel, is a precursor to Lord of the Flies, and Lord of the Flies builds on it. What is a good society? How do some groups have more control than others? How, like, the choir takes automatic control. Like, we could be the army, says Roger in the early episode. You go from these schoolboys to total savagery, and the body paint, which is, the red and the white and all of it. It's beautifully done. There is a beautifulness to how this is filmed and how savage it is. The long goodbye between Piggy and Ralph is heart-wrenchingly sad. The music, I felt, was wonderful, that they just allowed it to happen. It didn't overwhelm, it didn't lead people to feel anything, it just allowed it to be. And I also felt that they allowed Jack's choices to be as well, because you saw his eyes and you saw him, he considered each choice, each stopping point. Jack would pause before he made the decision, and you had the hope that he would choose a different path. But no, he was going to hang on to this fun irresponsibility for as long as possible. The power, because he knew that if he didn't choose that, he would lose and Roger would take control. Now we're going to come on to something that is very, very violent. In the book, when Roger throws the rock at Piggy, and he does throw it at him, and Piggy falls, and his head is basically, he dies instantly from a rock thrown to his head, and his brains are gashed out on the floor, and the conch is wrecked. In this version, the conch is destroyed, and the conch is really important because that's the way that we communicate. We call an assembly, we then pass it around, and if you've got the conch, you can speak. So that's almost like the destruction of democracy and basic virtues of being tolerant and fair and equality and allowing everybody to speak. So Roger has completely smashed that as soon as he smashes and destroys Piggy. The fact that in this version, you don't get that automatically. You get the conch representing all of that that's smashed, which means that Ralph has got to then, he sort of leads Piggy to his death, and then he leads him away to then die in the forest. And you get that long conversation between Piggy and Ralph that is so beautiful, but then they change it because obviously in this version of Lord of the Flies, they've named Piggy Nicholas to give him dignity. And I fully get it, but it's not right and it's not accurate. Sorry. But then again, this book is 1940s. We do get some of the wizard and wicked, slang. But very much, it doesn't matter that this is set then. What matters is the concepts that we're dealing with. The beast is within mankind, and mankind is by nature savage. If you take away the restraint of society, most people will start to, you mean I've not got the Magna Carta? I don't have to follow the law. I can just take this rabbit and eat it myself. Oh, how fun. And that's what we're dealing with here. Bearing in mind that there is a nuclear war going on in this episode. But I love the fact that one of Piggy's last lines is, I don't get why there was an elephant wearing pyjamas. I found that interesting. And then what he says about, come to a tropical island and feel a bit nippy. His sarcasm and his humour comes through, and I thought that was a really nice touch, because in the book you don't get that. He is just pasted. He's just blood paste and brain splat on the floor, and it's harrowing in the book when Piggy dies, and Ralph is like, I've got to run because they're going to come for me, and then they run. You get the fight between Jack and Ralph? It's ongoing and it's constant, and then you get the physicality of it. It's a mental fight, it's a psychological fight, it's an emotional fight between the rule of law and savagery, because that's what these two characters represent. But they don't make these boys evil or good. They're not evil or good. They are concepts at this point. So you've got society with Ralph and the social conditioning, then you've got savagery and Jack, but they're both insecure about it, and both are brave in kind of bonkers ways. They're not evil and good. You haven't got that, because Roger is evil and Piggy and Simon are good. Ralph and Jack are two people that all the way through these 4 episodes have been jarring, because Jack has wanted to be the boss, and Ralph has also got the skills and leadership skills to be a very good leader. Is he a very good leader? No, they're children and there are weaknesses there, but you can see the potential, because these are children that have the potential to lead. And what I really found so sad was the digging of the grave. That reminded me very much of how Harry Potter digs Dobby's grave and buries him. You had that symbolism again here, and it was beautifully done, and the music was very fitting, because it just allowed it to be, which I've said before. But the fact that we knew that Ralph lost his mum, and it enabled him to handle that death in a way that in the book you just don't get. Ralph doesn't have time. He has to flee, and he flees. And the reason I feel that they included the burying of Piggy is the fact that they didn't get to bury the pilot. And I mean, Simon got carried out to sea, and very Jesus-like, because that's what happens to Simon. But Piggy's body's just left there, smashed, totally destroyed, because it's civilization. Piggy's death in the book represents civilization being splattered and savagery taking over the whole island. We're going to chase Ralph, we're going to kill the beast, cut his head, kill the pig, all of that. I love the fact you get that innocent drawing, you know, of Jack drawing in the sand, and suddenly you're like, ooh, the kid's gone psychotic, he's going to kill pigs. I feel a bit nippy. Come to a tropical island and feel a bit nippy. That's a brilliant line from Piggy. That actually isn't in the book, it's just in this. I am going to talk about seeing the petty officer on the beach, because I love the reaction to that. I loved Roger's reaction. As soon as he saw that other authority, he was like, oh, I did nothing. So psychopathic. And the littlies just automatically line up and start getting loaded into the boat. And the older children, the big uns, they have to... I love the boy that was holding the fire and like the sword and the spear and like, yeah, because everybody else drops their spear as soon as they see the petty officer, but the kid with the fire is just sort of like, with two things, is just sort of like, he can't put them behind his back, so he's just like there, and you're like, oh, good grief. And then Jack's reaction is just like, so hard and so annoyed, because he knows he's got to put himself back in that box, whereas Roger's automatic reaction was just to drop it and to, I did nothing, and he's reverted already. Jack's furious because it's going to be ripped away from him and he's going to be put back into that role of whatever it is that's forced upon him. And we know that it's forced upon him because his relationship with Simon tells us so. You know, that there's something deeply insecure and unsettling with Jack, that he's got a responsibility that he perhaps doesn't want or need. And that's fascinating, I find. Whereas Roger, you know, Roger's just going to like go back to throwing stones at little uns as soon as he gets back. But Jack's defiance, he was like, oh, I've lost my kingdom, I've lost everything. Imagine having all of it. Because Jack gets a fort in this episode. Imagine having that power taken from you in such a way by a grown-up, when you've had no grown-ups and you've had a fun camp and you've managed to go out and kill pigs and smear their blood on you. Admittedly, hunting practices, they used to blood people on their first hunt. Say somebody's killed their first pheasant or their first whatever it is, they put blood on them as a way of saying, yeah, you're a hunter now. You feel that Jack's like, I've lost my kingdom. I can no longer rule. So awful. In a way, you should feel happy that Jack's got rescued. You do for Ralph and you do for the little uns, but for Jack, you feel there's a loss there. And his stare expressed that perfectly. But then again, his stare was brilliant because every time he paused, you knew Jack was considering a decision. I loved that thoughtfulness that they put in him because it actually gave him depth, it gave him character, it gave him a conscience. Whereas Ralph was literally just like, I'm just going to beat this. You know, Ralph was literally like running for his life. And then Roger was chasing, but you knew if Roger got him, there would be no pause, no conscious thought. It would literally just be stabbed with that savagery. You knew that. Whereas Jack, I love the fact that before the fight between Ralph and Jack that was very physical, there was a pause and they had that conversation and suddenly it turned into something else. I liked that. 5 out of 5. This Lord of the Flies has been the best version. There's been 2 films. One's in black and white, and the other is an American one in colour. And to be absolutely honest, I loved the BBC one. It was the book to a T. And you got to see the parachute. The parachute was there on the beach. I loved that because that's the beast. That's the thing that's, you know, been blowing. But on the beach, it was just a parachute from the pilot. I loved that. 5 out of 5, an excellent series, and I probably will watch it again. They're probably halfway through in the summer, I think. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The best version of Lord of the Flies. I think I'm done. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And I do recommend watching it all on BBC iPlayer. And actually there's an excellent making of it documentary on BBC iPlayer, which I thought was really fascinating and interesting. And I love the creative choices. It is the book to film. Even with the 3 prequels, you know, the parents putting the kids on the plane, the Ralph backstory added, and the choir boys, it just adds some depth to the material, because the book literally is, oh, there's a war going on, but we're on this island, and on the island we're going to deal with what is the nature of evilness of man, how are civilizations broken, what's a savage, what's not a savage, is Roger a psychopath? Probably. Is Jack a psychopath, or is he just a little boy enjoying the bravado and the masculinity set free of the cocky swagger? Look, I don't have to. Imagine if one 12-year-old girl was added on that island, the whole thing would be totally different, because then all the boys would compete for her attention and her praise. I bet they would. Girls would just not bother. They would just, like, you know, collect fish and eat the fruit and keep the toilets clean. Girls would be bothered about loose. Piggy would just be in his element, because the girls would just be like, no, we've got the toilet system down and the shelter system down, and we are considering killing pigs, but only male pigs, because why would you kill mother pigs? Because that's where you get the babies from. Incompetent children. Oh yeah, girls would have it so down. I think that would be fascinating. Why isn't there a book about girls on a desert island and how they survive? Because girls can be quite catty and nasty and with the claws. They really can. 13-year-old girls can, and 12-year-old girls can, but it would be a different kind. Boys just don't have that mental elasticity. They just want sticks. There's a wonderful scene in Anne of Green Gables, or in Anne with an A, where the girls are inside having this very deep, meaningful conversation, and then they're looking from the schoolhouse out to the boys, and the boys are like whacking sticks on the ground and at trees, and they're like, why do they do that? And Anne of Green Gables says, that's a question for the ages. And it is a question for ages. Why do boys like to hit things with sticks? .com, and girls just don't bother. Anyway, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and thank you so much for your support, and do check this version of Lord of the Flies out, because it's an excellent version. Thank you so much. Bye!